This practice is going to get you ready for Pincha Mayurasana, feathered peacock, otherwise known as forearm stand. So let's go ahead and start in tabletop pose. Spread out your fingers, knees under hips, and then tuck your toes and lift your knees for downward facing dog. We'll take a few moments here in Adho Mukha Svanasana to warm up your arms and open up your legs. Get those guys ready for the forearm stand, which is an inversion and an arm balance. So preparing the arms and preparing the hamstrings really important here. You can pedal out your heels, bending your knees. Take your time in this posture if you need to be here for a few more moments just to steady your breath and check in for your practice. This is a great pose to always come back to just to check in for grounding and setting your feet on the floor once we get into the forearm stand. Let's move into Anahatasana next to help open up the shoulders and the chest. Take your knees down to the floor and walk your arms forward until your chest, maybe your chin or your forehead comes to the floor. And I'm going to show you a really good modification here. If this is really intense just at the start of this practice, a block or two, really nice to have under your chest. So the block right under the chest, and then this way your forehead or your chin can come to the floor a little bit more comfortably, and maybe even a second block under your chin if you need. I'm feeling this really intense stretch. It can be intense in the triceps and the lats, which these areas really need to be open for the forearm stand because of the range of motion in the shoulders, the flexion that's required in the shoulder joint. And then a third modification if you want to take it a little bit deeper, as long as this does not put too much pressure on your shoulders. 2 blocks, one under each hand, and then your chest and chin to the floor. And in this pose, you're actively pressing your palms into the floor, lifting your elbows, pressing out through your fingers. Press down into your knees, the tops of your feet. And make sure there's not any pinching in your shoulders or the back. Okay, I'm going to bring it back in for my second stretch. This one's going to get into the triceps. So these are really good prep postures for Pincha Mayurasana. So I've put those 2 blocks in a little closer so that my elbows can come on the blocks, and then sit back into child's pose. Trying to get the elbows like in the center of the block. So the lower third of your triceps is coming down to the block. And then your thumbs can come back to your back. You can take prayer pose here. You can place your palms on your back if you'd like, rotating the thumbs out. Working your elbows closer together will help maybe fire up some deeper places in those muscles. And then also I like to take my thumbs into the upper trapezius and just kind of push the trapezius away. So hooking my thumbs in my upper shoulder, neck muscle area helps to kind of open that space. Okay, coming out of this with an inhale, come back up to kneeling. And in a kneeling position, move your head around, roll your shoulders around. Take some head circles, shoulder rolls. Then we'll move back into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. So again, situate your hands, spread out those fingers, pinch the mat with your index finger and thumb, and lift your hips. See if you can lengthen your back a little bit more, and then roll forward into plank pose and maintain the length in your spine. Chaturanga, exhale. Upward facing dog, inhale. Exhale, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, again finding the length in the back. Oh, you're avoiding the rounding in the low back. Lift the right leg. As you lift, really feel the length in the spine. Okay, I'm going to take my left elbow to the floor. I've walked it under my shoulder a little closer into my foot. Right leg opens up, hip opener here. And then if you're comfortable, taking the right hand back under the right shoulder and lift your left heel and balance on that left arm. So this is a 1-arm prep for Pincha Mayurasana. Good. Then walk your right hand out. Step the right foot forward. You can lift that left elbow off the floor. Warrior one. Reach your arms up. Press back through your left heel. Bend the right knee deep. Anchor down into the center of your right heel. Lift your chest. Take your hands behind your back. Interlace your fingers. Open your heart. Exhale, bow, humble warrior. And then keep pressing through your left foot. Maintain the bend in the right knee, pressing the right knee straight forward. Find your balance as you lift your left heel, roll to your left toes, and then inhale, slowly lift back up into high lunge, Ashtha Chandrasana. So your left heel's up off the floor now. Arms reach up. Hover over your right leg as you fire up those glutes, left hand down. Keep the hips level, twist open with your right arm. So keep pressing the right sit bone down and lift your left thigh bone up. Reach your right hand up and look up past your right fingers. Step back, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana as you exhale. Plank pose, inhale. Chaturanga, exhale. Inhale into a back bend, upward facing dog or cobra. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. We'll do that second side with the right elbow coming back into the mat underneath your right shoulder. So lift your left leg first, open up the hips, and then place your right elbow under your shoulder. And then your left hand can walk back in a little closer, and maybe even adding in the extra little heel lift here with the right foot, the heel lifting. Again, feel that strength, the fire in the right shoulder. You can stay here as long as you need to get those shoulders opened up and maybe even revisit this pose. Once we move into the forearm stand, maybe this is where you need to be for your forearm stand. All right, reset your hands so you can step that left foot forward. Right heel presses back, warrior one. Virabhadrasana A. As you sink your hips down, lift your ribs, lift your belly. Bend the left knee forward and really press back with your right heel. Inhale, arms behind, open your chest, interlace your fingers. Exhale, bow, humble warrior. Consciously fire up that right thigh. Sometimes it forgets, so squeeze the right thigh, lift the right knee, seal the right foot down. Then slowly turn to the right toes as you lift the right heel. Find your balance, lift your head, lift your arms, Ashtha Chandrasana, high lunge. Hover your lunge, lift your belly, lengthen your spine, right hand down, left hand up, twisting. Keep the right heel lifted and the right thigh fired up. Bend your left knee forward. Release your left hand down and step back, downward facing dog as you exhale. Plank pose as you inhale. Chaturanga, bend your elbows, hips lower, and belly button lowers all the way to the floor. Cobra this time, point your toes back, hips are on the floor. Exhale, come down, and then take your left arm straight out to the side in a T shape so you can roll over into a shoulder twist. Your right foot can come behind on the floor, but fire up that left leg, flex your left ankle. And keep your neck neutral here. One more breath. Exhale back over to your belly. Inhale, Bhujangasana, cobra pose. Lift your chest, lift your chin, lift your throat, lift your ankles. Lower back down. Exhale, right hand out, twist to the side. So the right arm comes up slightly higher than your shoulder, creating that half T shape. If your left foot is coming behind you, engage the left glutes and the left knee points to the ceiling. Roll back over, hands to the mat. Inhale, Cobra, Bhujangasana. And lift up, exhale, downward facing dog. Rolling over your toes. Lengthen your back here. All right, knees down. And then come into elbows on the mat right under your shoulders in a tabletop position. And we'll take cat-cow in a forearm tabletop. As you exhale, round. As you inhale, open. Play with different movements here. So in the inhale, extension, and in the exhale, flexion. In each one, play with some shoulder movements. So maybe the shoulder blades are protracting and retracting. And then we're going to take this into a dolphin pose. So the knees lift here, and keep your shoulders over your elbows. So we're not cranking the shoulders back. You're actually pushing the shoulders forward. This should be heat in your shoulders and work, not a stretch in the shoulders. And this is another great place then when we move on to the actual forearm stand to practice that pose. This is still an inversion. Getting your feet off the floor doesn't have to happen. Forearm plank, walk your feet back until your hips, shoulders, and heels make a nice little diagonal line. Squeeze your belly, squeeze your thighs. And then lower down to the mat with your hips, point your toes back, Sphinx pose. Open your chest, press your chest through your shoulders using your upper back. And lift your chin, feel a great stretch in your neck here. And then rest on your forehead, on your hands, a little crocodile pose. And relax for a few moments. This is a place to come to, again, when we start that forearm stand practice. Take as many rests as you need. So all of these things we're prepping for that forearm stand, but they're also wonderful modifications and options for practicing that posture. Right foot steps forward, left knee on the floor. Reach your arms, low lunge, Anjaneyasana, inhale. Press down through the center of your right heel. See if you can just kind of buoyancy here, find some buoyancy. So on the inhale, you can lift, and on the exhale, you can deepen. Half split, take your hands to the floor, straighten your right leg out, and exhale. Keep your chest open here. So this is not about how deep can you get to the floor with your chest or your head or your hands. We want to really fire up the back of that right leg. Hamstring opening is very helpful when moving into inversions. You can play with turning the toes in different directions. Be careful with this not to experiencing. Be careful if you experience any pinching or any burning or any pain. This isn't good. It's getting into a nerve, into sciatica. We don't want to do that. All right, and then we'll come back out of that half split into the lunge again. Lift up your arms. Again, see here if you can find some buoyancy, lifting and lowering, creating a little bit more of a back bend, stretching out the front of that left hip. Forearm stand eventually turns into a back bend. So if that's where you're going with it, stretching out the front hip is a really great idea. Downward facing dog, take as long as you need here. Again, it's that grounding position. It's that grounding moment. Left foot forward, right knee down. Low lunge on the second side. Ease into it. Maybe it's not a big, deep lunge to start, and it just kind of progresses with each breath. Again, that's what I meant by the buoyancy. So you can feel the lift in the lower, easing, coaxing your body into it. But keep your chest open and keep your back long so it's not pinched or shortened. And then as you exhale, your hands to the floor for that half split. Pull your left leg straight. Your right hip comes back a little farther over the right knee. Keep your chest open. Use blocks under your hands if that helps. Again, you can play with the left foot turning out or in, maybe pointing or flexing. Notice if you point the foot, if it changes the sensation. If you flex the foot, dorsiflex or plantar flex. And just again, be mindful of any really intense sensations here. This is really just opening up some space. It shouldn't be about pain and torture for your body. It should feel good. And then we'll come back to center if you're moving that foot around and plant that left foot flat, bend your left knee, low lunge again. Focus on stretching the front of the right hip, not really getting lower in the left hip, but lifting the hips higher to create more stretch along the front of the right hip. All right, plant your palms and step back, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. We'll take Chaturanga here, just one more clearing vinyasa before we move into the forearm stand. Exhale, chaturanga from plank. Inhale, upward facing dog or cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then when you're ready, grab a couple blocks. We're going to set up the first Pincha Mayurasana forearm stand. So I've got 2 blocks for my elbows and 1 block for my feet. And depending on the span of your shoulders, you might not need 2 blocks. You might only need maybe 1, or you need 1 of those blocks turned the other way. So something between your elbows to squeeze. And we're not going to go into the arm balance quite yet. So for this, really, I just want you to feel that there is a squeezing in of the elbows. It's basically external rotation in the shoulders. So we want to squeeze the elbows in and flare the pinky fingers out. So you can feel the energy and the spiraling open at the shoulder head. It's an external rotation of the shoulder head. Press down into your elbows, press down into the wrists, press down into your palms. They like to pop up here. And then lower your knees down. All right, so next we'll take a block at the top of the mat and put your hands around the block. So you're going to frame the block with your index finger and thumb. And then really here, so pretend like that mat or that block is still between your elbows and squeeze the elbows in. The block at your hands just keeps your hands from spinning in. Step your feet back up on that block. This helps to lift your weight up and press the weight down into your elbows and send your hips up over your shoulders. Lift your heels here, squeeze your thighs. Remember to still practice the gaze, so look up to that block, keep your eyes on the block. When you're ready to come down, walk your feet back off the block, kneel on the block, and then walk your hands back in. You can stretch out your shoulders if they need a little break here. The next little setup I'm going to use is with a strap. So if you have a yoga belt, you can take that belt and make a loop that is as wide as your 2 center points of the shoulders. So from shoulder to shoulder, the center point, that's how big you want your loop. And then that loop is going to go right on your forearms, above your elbows to the very distal end of the humerus. So the very bottom part of the upper arm bone, right above the elbows. All right, so first we're going to take this into a stretch. Take your elbows down, and then you can situate the blocks if you need up a little closer, but I'm going to move this into Anahatasana again. So the blocks come right about the mid-rib cage, right at my solar plexus, arms forward, forehead on the floor, Anahatasana. It's a good idea to always take a few rests, especially when you're playing with several different options and props and setups for Pincha Mayurasana. All right, when you're ready, go ahead and lift those knees, walk your feet forward. You're going to step on the blocks with your feet. Careful, they're wobbly. Press into the belt with your elbows, but then also, again, flare those pinky fingers out. One leg lifts, and then really go to the tippy toes of the foot remaining on the blocks. Maybe a couple little hops. I'm switching to 1 block. That didn't feel great with those 2 blocks. And remember to keep your eyes up towards your forearms. Once you're finding some airtime, pinwheel legs. It helps with the balance. When you're coming out, foot down, other foot down, knees down, child's pose, take a break, or roll up to seated and close your eyes and sit in Virasana for just a moment. All right, next variation, I'm going to use a resistance band. It's one of the lighter ones. And if you don't have one of these, a TheraBand works well, tied at the end. Any kind of a rubber band that you can put over your neck, behind your head, under your knees. Come to hands and knees, 1 foot and then the other foot to the band. So you've got the band looped around the back of your neck or on the front of your shoulders, outsides of your thighs, down to your feet. 1 foot pushes the band up. The other leg is going to bend as it comes off the floor. So try not to shoot the feet up to the ceiling. And here's a shot of the TheraBand. This one was actually harder for me because it was shorter. So I guess it all depends on your proportions as well. Now remember to keep your gaze to the floor. You can use a block between your hands. You can use the belt back on your elbows. You can combine several props. But you can see here I'm pushing the band back, creating a little bit of an arrow with my left leg straight, right knee bent. All right, so take a few moments here playing with all of these different props. When you're finished with your forearm stand practice, we're going to come into a seated forward bend. If you need child's pose or just to sit for a moment, take your time. And as you're ready, go ahead and stretch your legs out in front of you. And if you have a couple blocks, grab those. If you still have those left over from the forearm stand practice, stack them on top of your legs for your head to rest on. We want this pose to just be super comfortable, relaxing, supportive. Your neck and head should have been working a lot, so this is a really nice way to relax your neck after that extension. Your head has to lift and extend for forearm stand. It's part of the balancing component in that practice and that posture. And so this is a really nice place to be, just let your forehead rest. Maybe you need 4 blocks, and that's fine. Or if you have any other props, a stool or a chair that you can forward bend out towards your legs. And after just about 5 or 10 breaths here, we're going to take this up into a supported back bend. Grab those blocks, put one under your shoulder blades and one under your head. And if you want, you can definitely take the block under your head out for a more intense back bend. This is just a very restorative back bend. I've got my feet on the floor, knees to the ceiling. In fact, they're kind of resting together. Please feel free to take any leg variation that you like. It could be bound angle, Virasana, toes tucked under behind. But let your chest and your heart open so that we're easing out of that opening that we were just practicing in forearm stand. Easing out of that work slowly and gently. Use this time for recovery. Right, and then the next position I'm going to move into is bridge pose. Take the blocks completely out of the way unless you're going to use them for a restorative bridge. Heels on the floor, hips lift. Take your hands underneath your back if you can interlace your fingers. Externally rotating the shoulders just like you did in forearm stand, except now your shoulders are extended instead of flexed. So again, it's a bit of a counter, a bit of a recovery position. Neck long here, hips lift. Use your glutes, use your hamstrings. Press into your feet. All right, lower back down and let your feet come together now for Supta Baddha Konasana, supine, bound angle. Let your arms relax wherever they feel like they want to go. A natural opening here. And then we'll turn this into a nice little twist. Let your knees move over to one side. If your knees move over to your left, you can use your right hand to help, and vice versa. So if you've got your knees going off to the left hand comes down to the right knee and just gives it a gentle little grounding. Just about 5 breaths there. Inhale back through bound angle. Once the twist has unwound, go off to the second side. Use your opposite hand to help ground the top knee. And again, just about 5 breaths here. Lift your legs back up through center when you're ready on an inhale. And hug those knees into your chest, Apanasana, exhale. Let your legs come out in Shavasana, corpse pose. A few minutes here in relaxation to let your body recover completely from the practice. Use any props that will help to really make this a good relaxation for your mind, for your body. being aware of both as you relax, both mind and body. Be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of your physical sensations. And be aware of how the two interact and affect each other, how they react to each other. And your awareness is free of rationalization, judging, analyzing, or fixing. Your awareness is just there, watching and observing. All right, let's start to bring this back into movement. Breath is bigger. Stretch your arms and legs out. Hug your knees in. Sigh your breath out if it feels good. And then roll off to the side so that you can press up to seated slowly as you're ready. End your practice with a bow to you and tell yourself thank you.